That's amazing.
Yeah, Arlo and Isaac.
That's awesome. And how old are they?
Arlo is 2 and Isaac is 5 months.
Oh boy, you are busy.
Yes, we are.
Oh, that's great. That's great. My name is Deb Skelley, and I own Bailey's Bubble in Wolfboro, New Hampshire, and it is a takeout ice cream establishment.
Where I worked from ages 15 to 19, I think.
Correct.
I do believe there was at least 1 year where I was subject to those under 16 work requirements where I had to leave at 9 o'clock. Because then pretty soon I could do all the late night closing stuff.
Right.
Which was the most fun for me. I liked hosing down the sidewalk and doing all that stuff.
That's good. Yeah, we still do it. We still do it all.
I know I've mentioned before on the show that I grew up in a very quaint tourist town in the Lakes region in New Hampshire. The tourist town's economy is really strange because there are these huge numbers of seasonal businesses that need a labor force, but since nobody can raise a family on summer earnings alone, what happens is those jobs all fall to kids. There have got to be more 14-year-olds employed per capita in Wolfboro, New Hampshire than anywhere else in the country. Scooping ice cream at Bailey's Bubble at age 15 was somehow my 4th job. I started at 14 at Bailey's Restaurant, which was a separate enterprise owned by other members of the Skelley family. It was actually their last summer of operation. That spring, I turned 15 years old and I washed dishes at a place called Dale's Cafe 2 nights a week. Then I started cooking at Morrissey's Front Porch, the restaurant that replaced Bailey's. By the end of that summer, I had turned heel on Morrissey's and returned to Skelley family-based employment at the Bubble. My family and the Skelleys go way back, so working for them in the summers was sort of predestined for me anyway. Yeah, so every year the Bubble opens on Memorial Day weekend, and this year was no different, right?
Correct. We actually opened on May 9th. So we were able to get our feet wet a little bit before the before the big weekend, which we felt was really important this year because we have changed many of our procedures.
One thing you should know about the Bubble is that it's just a little booth built into the side of a building. It's probably 10 or 12 feet long and 4 or 5 feet wide. It's on a side road off of Main Street, up the way from this very storybook-looking train station that's on every single Wolfboro postcard and all over the Google image search results. I went to preschool in that train station with Deb's son. When I think about all the things that were totally normal to me about my childhood that take so much explaining now, I think I appreciate it more.
Well, you know that we're unique because we are the only business in Wolfboro that does not have the ability to walk inside.
Right.
We are purely a sidewalk business, takeout. And so we had to be very creative. We are doing call-ins. We're doing curbside in the spaces in front of the Bubble. So we have spots down. So when you come, you stand on a spot, which is 6-foot distancing. I have a crew inside and a crew outside. So the crew outside steps up 6 feet from the people at their spot, take their order, and then they bring the order up to the window and they slide it through the window. And the crew inside is responsible to make the order, pack it. So everything we serve is not only does it have covers, but it's also in a bag, stapled closed. And then we put it on a tray, and the kids outside bring the order to the people, and it has a basket on it. The tray does. The people put the money in the basket. The basket gets put back under the window, and there's one person inside that's dealing with just the money. It's taken us 3 weeks to get to that point.
So for people that don't know, I guess, in a normal summer, you have a line from the ice cream window, usually, I would say on most days, out into the street.
Easily, sometimes across the street.
So I had a hard time imagining how that was going to look 6 feet apart. You'd be taking up the entire downtown Wolfboro with the line.
And that was another concern, Zach, was that we also use the sidewalk space.
Yeah.
And the town is very, very concerned about social distancing on the sidewalk. So we ask people after they place their order to step off to the side, maybe go across the street under a tree, or just step aside in some manner, and then it gives the opportunity for somebody else to step up.
Sure.
Now, the other thing that's changed is, that not only has Bailey's Bubble been, an ice cream establishment with good ice cream and a good product, but it's a place to socialize. So that's why I'm packing everything to go. That's why everything is in a white bag and it's stapled, because it promotes stepping away. Because we can't have the crowds that we've had. So if people will step away, which they've been stepping away, and the town has been extremely gracious in putting many picnic tables all over town, so that people can step away from the businesses and eat whatever to-go food they have purchased. So that is a huge help also.
What a difference it really is from handing somebody an ice cream cone through a window to a tray with a stapled bag. Does this mean you have to have more people working each shift to have this two-crew thing?
Double. Yep. And I think that's really important, Zach. And I know when we were, it was a few months of really having to think very hard and having to think outside the box. I don't want to just make it through this year. I want to, or this season, I want my business to continue on and on. So I said, what can I do outside the box? And I know it's going to cost me more money, but I have to keep those customers, and it's going to help me in the long run. And people seem to be very happy that we're being very cautious. I think we're doing it the right way. I have been talking to other business owners who have, mentioned, well, I think I'll cut back on my help because, it's not going to be as busy. And I said, I can't think that way. I have to think about those customers, pleasing them and getting things to them as quickly as I can so they come back again, so they don't give up on us. I guess that's my thought. I don't want people to give up on us.
It's funny. First of all, it's very funny that you say you have to think outside the box, because as we have established, the bubble really is just literally a box.
It is a box, a small box.
Are the indoor and outdoor crews, are they required to wear masks?
Yes, we all have masks and we all have gloves.
You said it took about 3 weeks to train everybody on all of that?
Well, and I'm still training. My help is much better than I am, because, Zach, as you know, it was all listening, doing, and passing out. Now we have to, when you're inside, instead of just listening to a customer, now you have to be able to read it. You have to know all the abbreviations. And so that was very, very different to go from a just totally verbal communication to visual and verbal and all that. So that's been a huge learning curve. But as you know, I have the best and the brightest working for me. So they've done it very well. I'm a little bit slower.
I know it sounds like a little thing, but this is actually a fundamental change in terms of how things are done at the Bubble. It was the change that shocked me the most. Ever since the Bubble's first years of operation, it's been a point of pride for all of us that work there that we could memorize long orders and create them and then ring them up without ever writing anything down. And I'm talking long orders, okay? During my tenure, Mitt Romney and his family were regulars. You know how many Romney kids and grandkids there are? Me either. It's one of those things where as soon as you're finished counting, somehow there's another one. Which one are you again? Tag? Brick? Horse? Does anybody remember that Mitt Romney's wife owned an Olympic dressage horse? Anyway, I was thinking about when I worked at the Bubble, remembering, for instance, that I kept this journal under the cash register that had like a humorous anthropological accounting of all of our regular customers. And I realized that what I was doing there, trying to make my coworkers laugh, basically, it's now a job skill that I regularly include on resumes. The corporate term for it is employee engagement, but It's really the same stuff. I've been doing it professionally for 18 years.
What about the customers? I know you've only been open for a little while, but how have the customers been responding to the changes?
Most of them have been very satisfied. I think the locals in particular are very satisfied. I think they were very worried. They were watching us. They were anticipating how we were going to do it. And I think they've been very pleased. I think they're very pleased. The tourists, some of them are, I think, pleased. I think some are thinking we're doing too much. I've had some people tell me that they've been all over and they haven't seen anybody doing as much as we're doing. And some have been happy when they said that and saying it in a positive manner. And some have acted like, you're wasting your money, your payroll's got to be high, your packaging materials are high. And I agree, it's very costly, but I think it's very important. I have 24 teenagers and young adults working for me, and my job is to keep them safe and their families and the general public. So I don't see it as doing too much.
It's interesting that it would be the tourists who are saying that. I mean, I know a lot of people in the community are just nervous about having an influx of tourists in the first place,
Yes, they are. Yeah.
It's a very tricky proposition for a community like Wolfboro, because they really need the influx of tourism every year. But this year, that's very fraught. So I guess if I was a tourist coming to Wolfboro, I wouldn't criticize anybody about anything.
Right. And I think that's the way most people are. And, I have to say, I think the service has been stellar, because I have a lot of kids on, and they jump right to the people. And I think they're doing a great job. Now, when it gets even busier, it'll be interesting to see what happens. They'll probably say, well, we're waiting longer. It's hard for me to believe they will be with all the help that I have on, but we'll see. And, I'm not set in the way I'm doing it. I'm very open to changing if we need to make anything better. My employees have, I give them a lot of credit for, telling me each day what works, what isn't working, and we change it.
Two things that Deb touched on back there set off some Rube Goldberg type contraptions in my head. The first was about the need to anticipate a better future. I recently started a new job, which felt like a really dangerous thing to do with a young family amid a pandemic, but I felt like I had to. I felt like I had to throw in my lot with the possibility of all of this turning out okay in the end. I had to vote with my feet. I am a person constitutionally incapable of planning for the worst. And that is, in part, because I know just how easy it would be for me to throw in the towel, to play it safe, never take a leap. In the last couple of years, I've taken a lot of leaps. Finally, after declining to leap for so long, and I needed to keep the momentum going, or else I might have never started again. The second thing that Deb mentioned was her sense of responsibility to lead as a business owner in this complicated time. This is in fact something that I wanted to talk about in the original non-pandemic version of this season of the show. A question that I wanted to ask long before it became so critically important. Whose job is it to lead, anyway? Is it the president's job? Is it the experts in any given field? Should leadership happen more at the local level, attuned to the needs of the locals? If so, who are the best people for that job? A couple of weeks before the pandemic, I sat down with Rick Wallis. He is the president of Piscataqua Savings Bank, which is a mutual savings bank headquartered in Portsmouth, founded in 1877. I don't think Rick's been the president of the bank that whole time. But I wanted to talk to him about B-Corps, or benefit corporations, which are not exactly the same thing, but also kind of are. See, I'd recently learned, after hearing Rick give a talk about them at the New Hampshire Theater Project, that there are these businesses all over the world that are specifically marked by their intention to do right by their communities and not just their shareholders. And I thought it maybe reflected a trend in the corporate world that I was noticing, a growing tendency to emphasize obligations to employees and the surrounding community environment, a growing sense of corporate responsibility. And I wanted to explore that trend. Is it a trend? Is it real? Is it here to stay? And if it is there a way that it could be corrupted? So let's start here. What is a B Corp?
A B Corporation is a company that's certified by a third party to balance profit and purpose.
Okay. So before we started recording, you were mentioning Milton Friedman. And I think my first exposure to sort of the business community was like Enron. You know, I was in high school, and I first encountered this idea that businesses are beholden to their shareholders and nobody else.
And that's true. I mean, for a number of decades, actually, you know, I was saying Milton Friedman, he's a famous economist who most companies followed his kind of teachings that the sole responsibility of any corporation is to their shareholders only and nothing else. And I think there's a change in that. Obviously, the tides are changing a little bit.
So the business community in general is moving more toward valuing their community, their employees, or at least making that part of their stated belief system.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that's because, you know, the public, the community, their customer base is looking for that action to be taken. I'll give you an example. There's a certain type of investing called ESG or social responsible investing that certain companies adhere to, and a lot of people will invest in that. You think about Pact Rule Fund. I don't know if you're familiar with them locally, but they invest in social responsible companies only. So for investors that don't want to invest in tobacco companies or oil companies or things like that might be hurting the environment or individuals, they would invest in these stocks and these companies that are just socially responsible companies. And we're seeing a huge rise in that over the last 3 or 4 years.
I mean, to me, right, that's kind of like the leveled up version of like shopping locally, you know, like, so, vote with your money, right? I try to support local businesses, local retailers, and local, breweries and that sort of thing that I support and that I believe in, because I don't have the kind of money to go around like investing in businesses. But the people that do, that share the same values as me, they can do even more than that, and they're
going to put their monies with companies or buy products from companies that are responsible. Same like the investing. Agreed. So that's just like what you're doing. Others want to do the same thing.
Yes, just with much more money.
Not necessarily, but
So a B corporation is the creation of this designation, a B corporation, is that a result of this trend, or is this something that has been around for a while already?
It's been around for a little while, but I think it's kind of a precursor to it. Now, what a B company or B corporation is we're certified. We actually have a third-party entity called B Lab that's a nonprofit that actually goes out and actually certifies companies that want to become B corporations. So there's actually two things that are synonymous in term, but they mean different things. There's being a certified B corporation, and there's a thing called a benefit corporation. Now, a benefit corporation is a legal tie or requirement that a business actually do the right things for all the things I talked about, the environment, communities, and their employees and customers and so forth. And there's only 35 states that recognize benefit corporations, New Hampshire being one of the 35. So when we went and became a B corporation, got certified, we had to become a benefit corporation under our actual bylaws, and our articles of agreement had to be changed to show that we actually are going to benefit be a benefit corporation and provide benefit to our stakeholders, the community and customers and so forth.
So it's sort of like B Lab is the one that certifies you as a B Corp, but being a benefit corporation is kind of like it's like a tax designation.
It's not a tax designation. It's not like a C Corp or anything like that. It's just a designation. A benefit corporation is just that it's the legal right. So if I was a stock-held company, which we're not, we're a mutual savings bank, but if a stock-held company wanted to take action that would benefit other people other than their shareholders, they can't be sued. There's an actual legal tie to them being responsible and having to be responsible. That makes sense.
Okay, that makes sense. Yes.
Protects them too.
So what efforts were made? What sort of things were verified in order for you to become this?
There's actually 5 categories that they look at, and there's like 200 questions throughout all these different categories, and they actually verify the information. They'll actually ask you for supporting documentation as you go through the process. The process takes anywhere between 6 to 8 months to kind of get all the way through it and be verified and so forth. 5 categories, one being community, environment, workers, governance, and then customers. For example, one of the areas is like, take community, for example. What does your company do to support the community? Now, it can be in a way of donations or volunteerism within your staff, or it could be, do you deal with local vendors? You talked about supporting local people. So those are the kind of things that they actually try to measure within that particular category. Environment, what are the things that you take into consideration when you take in products? Now, for a bank, we're not a manufacturing firm who may have difficulty trying to balance those measurements. But
right, you don't have like a huge carbon footprint.
No, we don't have a right. But do we recycle? Do we do certain measures to make sure that chemicals aren't put in the wrong place? We have systems and process in place to make sure we do all those types of things.
Okay, so a B Corp is the status bestowed upon organizations by the nonprofit group B Lab. That's the designation where somebody really checks what you do and critically measures it against the other things that you do. Meanwhile, a benefit corporation, which I know sounds like exactly the same thing, it's a legal status recognized in 35 states and DC, and it includes a positive impact on workers, the community, and the environment as the company's legally defined goals, along with profit. This is a way of making activities that don't necessarily lead explicitly to higher profit margins still legally in the best interest of the corporation. And this is one of those things where, before whenever it was that we started doing this, status as a traditional corporation didn't mean you explicitly rejected making the world a better place, Whenever you change the law this way, you legally enshrine those kind of blind spots. The best example I know is that when Congress passed the War Powers Resolution in 1973, it was a law intended to rein in executive overreach when it came to military conflicts around the world. The Constitution says that only Congress has the power to declare war, but the president can and does order troops around the world to wreak all kinds of havoc without actually calling it war. See, in the Federalist Papers, Alexander Hamilton argued that the president could order the military unilaterally in cases where secrecy and dispatch were needed. And so those two principles, war powers and secrecy and dispatch, they have guided the debate back and forth for 200 years. But then, in 1973, Congress got sick of the ambiguity, and they put specific timelines on the president's secret dispatching of military force. The president now has to notify Congress within 48 hours after committing armed forces to military action, and the troops can't stay anywhere longer than 60 days without congressional approval. The thing about it is, before the War Powers Resolution, there was a strong case to be made that the president shouldn't even have that much power. But after it was passed, it became his new baseline. It was not the smartest move on Congress's part. It's like your neighbor saying he wants to build a garage in your yard, and you say, well, it can only be a one-car garage, and I get to have a dartboard. Sorry, I so rarely get to use my political science degree that I couldn't resist the digression. I guess what I'm saying is, would someone really have sued a company for making green upgrades or sponsoring a local concert series or something? Isn't or wasn't there a legal argument to be made that all of that stuff is in the service of profit too? So overall, B Corps or not, we spoke earlier about this trend of business communities sort of accepting more social responsibility. I can only sort of see what's happened in the time that I've become like an aware person, but when Donald Trump was elected and he said we were going to pull out of the Paris Climate Agreement, lots of businesses said we are still going to affirm our commitments to the Paris Climate Agreement. And you see that kind of effort in different places all the time. I heard an ad on the radio today for Sam Adams that was like, it had a very pro-immigration message. Mm-hmm. And that's a curious way to sell beer. I mean, I agree with it, right? So does it make me more likely to buy Sam Adams? Maybe, a little bit.
Yeah, right.
So I guess what I'm curious about is, do you think this is the way it should be? Do you think that in America, are we just kind of always shifting our burdens from like the government to the business to people, back to business, back to the government? Do you think that businesses should lead?
I think businesses have an opportunity to lead. They've got the resources, they've got the capital to do certain things with that capital, and I think there should be a responsibility to that other than just their shareholders. And I think it's a great trend that we're seeing going forward.
Okay, one more political science thing real quick. I like Rick's answer, which you will notice wasn't really an answer to my question so much as a reframing of it. Should businesses lead? Well, they have an opportunity to do so. It's an answer that's very much in the spirit of realpolitik, which is about considering the way that a body of government actually acts as opposed to how they're supposed to act in theory. I remember this was John Yo's defense of executive power when he was a member of the Bush administration. Basically, doesn't matter what Hamilton or any of those other dead guys think, this is what's already happening and has been happening, so deal with it. I'm not saying that I agree with John Yoo about, like any single line item that he thinks about, anything. John Yoo is the torture memo guy, if you don't know. But I do think that conversations about politics and leadership can often get hung up on the theoretical principles and can ignore what's really happening. Remember how often in 2017 you had to hear the word norms? I like focusing on what's really happening, not what should or shouldn't happen in a laboratory setting. So I guess that kind of answers my original question. Do you feel as though the business community being beholden to the community and their employees and all of this wonderful lovey-dovey stuff is conditional on the economy being good? If things take a turn, are we going to go back to the Milton Friedman way?
Well, let me be clear. I mean, one of the reasons that I want to become a B Corporation is, one, it's an easy way for people to understand who we have been and what we always have been. But I don't see the two being mutually exclusive, profit and connection with your community. I see it being hand in hand. By just doing away with these other things and disconnecting with your community doesn't necessarily bring you more profits, but being connected to your community can actually improve your bottom line. So I don't see that going away. I think if people really see what that impact does, and I know a lot of people understand who we are, they appreciate who we are, and they come to us and do business because of who we are. I can only speak for myself. I hope that others will see that and realize that, if you take the long-term view and not just what am I going to make for bottom line this year, and you can take that long-term view, you're going to see that they go hand in hand with each other.
My other question is there a way in which this trend or these designations could be sort of cheapened and exploited? I think about like the organic food, mm-hmm. right? The term organic became gradually meaningless because of variations on certification and deceptive marketing and everything, to the point where now there's different words that we use. Like they use right. sustainable, and they use different. People use the word organic and they don't even know what it means anymore.
Right.
15 years ago, it meant something very specific.
Right.
Is there a possibility that could happen with benefit corporations? Could there be the real certified ones?
Well, the B Corps, I mean, you could say you're a designated benefit corporation, but if you're a B Corporation, you're being certified, unless they change their standards. And I don't know much about the organic certification process that went through, and whether that changed and got softened up. I don't know that.
That is kind of what happened, yeah.
And if they soften up their guidelines and their strict, there's a scoring system that they have. If they kind of make that relaxed and a little bit easier, then I can see that being kind of cheapened, and anybody would just come in and could be a B Corporation or certified B Corporation. But if they really want it to mean something, I think it's that nonprofit's responsibility to make sure they hold us to a higher standard.
The week that I was finishing up this episode, people got very upset at AMC Theaters for refusing to require that patrons wear masks, despite the increasing evidence that masks are maybe our best remaining hope at keeping the virus down. So guess what happened? People complained, AMC Theaters reversed their position in response to the public outcry, and the whole thing took, I think, less than 24 hours. People accomplished this change with their voices alone. Nobody had to pass a law or wait for the chance to elect someone who might change it. They just spoke up, and a business responded. I guess that's why I'm interested in this trend, not because I care about what it means for business, but because of what it means for people. Around here, a couple years ago, a group of high school students called Dover Youth to Youth wanted to legally change the age to purchase tobacco from 18 to 21, statewide. Good idea, right? So they met with legislators and they got a bill in the New Hampshire State House, and it went nowhere. Do you know what they did next? They went to Walgreens. They went to Walmart. They went to local businesses, and they had a lot of success. And then they moved up a level, and they started getting towns and cities to change their local laws. Dover, New Hampshire did it first, then Keene. More municipalities are considering it now. I don't know when, if ever, New Hampshire will pass a statewide 21-plus tobacco law, but I know that before long, it will effectively be the law everywhere in New Hampshire and probably beyond. Sometimes I think of this podcast as just my way of passing on everything that I've figured out. It's my little map of the world. I just want to show people where I've noticed some stuff is. If you're thinking, as we slowly claw our way out of this crisis, if you're thinking about how you might want to make a difference in the world, well, here's one place to start.